recording now. Yes, okay, so we're reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 6, Text 8. Text 30. Thank you, I don't know why I said text 8. Text 30. Tatascha manava kale Ijire rishayo pare Pitaro vibudha daitya Manusya kratubir vibhum Atascha manava kale Ijire rishayo pare Pitaro vibudha daitya Manusya kratubir vibhum
Tatascha manava kale
Tatascha manava kale
Ijire rishayo pare
Rishayo pare
Taro vibudha daitya
Pitaro vibudha daitya
Manusya kratubir vibhum
Manusya kratubir vibhum
Tatascha manava kale
Tatascha manava kale
Ijide rishayo pare
Ijide rishayo pare
Itaro vibudha daitya
Itaro vibudha daitya
Manushya kratubir vibhum
Manusya kratubir vibhum
Tatascha manava kale
Tatascha manava kale
Ijire rishayo pare
Ijire rishayo pare
Vitaro vibudha daitya
Vitaro vibudha daitya
Manusya kratubir vibhum
Manusya kratubir vibhum
Tatascha manava kale
Tatascha manava kale
Ijire rishayo pare
Ijire
Rishayo pare
Taro vibudha daitya
Vitaro vibudha daitya
Manushya kratubir vibhum
Manusya kratubir vibhum. Would anybody else like to recite the verse? Okay, we'll go to word for word. Tata,
Tata
thereafter.
Thereafter
Cha,
Cha
also.
Also
Manava,
Manava
the Manus, the fathers of mankind.
The Manus, the fathers of mankind
Kale,
Kale
in due course of time.
In due course of time
Ijire,
Ijide
worship.
Worship
Rishaya,
Rishaya
great sages.
Great
Great
sages
sages
Apare,
Apare
others.
Others
Pitara,
Pitara
the
The
forefathers.
forefathers
Vibudha,
Vibudha
the learned scholars.
The learned scholars
Daitya,
Daitya
great devotees of the demigods.
Activities of the demigods
Manusya,
Manusya
mankind.
Mankind
Kratubi Vibhum,
Kratubi Vibhum
by performance of sacrifices to please the Supreme Lord.
by performance of sacrifices to please the Supreme Lord.
Translation. Thereafter, the Manus, the fathers of mankind, the great sages, the forefathers, the learned scholars, the Daityas, and mankind perform sacrifices meant to please the Supreme Lord. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. The Daityas are devotees of the demigods because they want to derive the greatest possible material facilities from them. The devotees of the Lord are ekanishta, or absolutely attached to the devotional service of the Lord. Therefore, they have practically no time to seek the benefits of material facilities. Because of their realization of their spiritual identity, they are more concerned with spiritual emancipation than with material comforts. Okay. So, fun fact, I believe Prabhupada hasn't given any lectures on this verse, so I couldn't listen to one of his lectures to learn what to say. So bear with me. So what stood out to me from this verse is Eka Nishta. Eka means one or only, the first, the foremost, and Nishta has lots of meanings, but some of them are attached, firm faith, or stage. And so Ekanishta means being attached to the one in front of the zeros, like we say in Sattva, means being attached to the first, to the greatest, really to the only, or as Prabhupada writes in this verse, absolutely attached to the devotional service of the Lord. So it also means stage. So it means being in that stage of spiritual development where that is really one's only attachment. And I found an excerpt from the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was attempting to convince the devotee Murari Gupta to let go of his devotion for Ramachandra and switch over to Krishna. And so he kept telling him all about Krishna's greatness. Krishna is the best, is the reservoir of all pleasure, is the original, the cause of all causes, the original source of everything. And he was telling Murari Gupta everything about Krishna. And still Murari Gupta refused to change, to let go of his devotion for Ramachandra. And so the translation of the Madhya Lila 15:154 says, the servitor must have love and affection for the lotus feet of the Lord exactly like this. Even if the Lord wants separation, a devotee cannot abandon the shelter of his lotus feet. So for me, this is interesting because it was really Krishna. So the Lord, even if the Lord wants separation, it was really the Lord asking his devotee to separate from him. But the devotee's love, the devotee's attachment for the Lord was so great that he refused to. And so in the purport, Prabhupada writes that Prabhu or master indicates the Lord who is to be continuously served by his devotee, and the original Prabhu is the Lord Krishna. Nonetheless, there are many devotees attached to Lord Ramachandra, and Murari Gupta is a vivid example of such unalloyed devotion. He never agreed to give up Lord Ramachandra's worship, not even after Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's request. And that is the chastity of devotional service. That is the perfectional stage of devotional service, is to be unwilling to let go, even if the Lord himself wants us to, or at least if it appears that way. So glorious is that devotee who does not give up the shelter of his Lord, and glorious is that Lord who does not abandon his servant. And if by chance a servant falls down and goes somewhere else, glorious is that master who captures him and brings him back by the hair. And so what I got from this is, once someone gets to that place of unalloyed devotional service where truly they don't want to let go, but if somehow, if by chance they fall down, then they're so attached that the Lord himself will grab them and pull them back up so that they don't actually really fall, which I found both beautiful, and it also seems like really intense. I imagine if Krishna in any of his forms approaches me and says, don't worship this form, worship this other form instead, I imagine I would say, yeah, okay, you got it, you know best. So to me, it's like inconceivable, this kind of firm faith, this kind of ekanishta that Murari Gupta achieved, where not even by, like, he had so much love for the Lord in the form of Ramachandra that not even the Lord's own request could get in the way. I find that so, like, just amazing. Yes. So some more excerpts from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, in the Madhya Lila, because my question is, okay, that sounds amazing, this amazing firm faith, this ekanishta, but like how does one get there? That seems like so intense, so far away, so like absolute. And the exact process is, I found this is actually described. So we start with good fortune, and maybe that comes from being pious in previous lives, and so what we might call good fortune. If by good fortune a living entity develops faith in Krishna, he begins to associate with devotees. So this is what I found really interesting. It starts with faith, like the end goal is this like firm faith, this ekanishta, and also it starts with faith. It's not maybe called ekanishta, but there's some form of faith that develops, which leads one to begin to associate with devotees. And then when one is encouraged in devotional service by the association of devotees, one becomes free from all unwanted contamination by following the regulative principles in chanting and hearing. Again, start with faith, association, and then the process of anartha-vritti by following the principles, by chanting, by hearing, like we do so much. And then when one is freed from all unwanted contamination, he advances with firm faith. So there's the firm faith. It comes back up near the end, once we've purified ourselves. And when firm faith in devotional service awakens, a taste for hearing and chanting also awakens. So before we do it anyway, that's sadhana bhakti. So we do the chanting and the hearing. We do the devotional service, though we might not have a taste for it. And after some time, what I hear is that then one develops a taste for that, and then it becomes enjoyable and pleasurable. At least that's what the scripture says. And after the taste is awakened, then a deep attachment arises, and from that attachment is the seed of love for Krishna. And when when that ecstatic emotional stage intensifies, that's called love of Godhead. Such love is life's ultimate goal and reservoir of all pleasure. So yes, it's that principle. It's all based on faith. In that same purport, Prabhupada writes, the basic principle for the execution of devotional service is faith. So it really starts with faith, and it culminates in like transcendental faith. It culminates in a kind of faith that that nothing can get in the way. Like when we say there's no material impediment to devotional service, this is how I hear that there's this unwavering, amazing faith that nothing, no circumstance, no condition, no experience can make us deviate from that faith. Of course, that's not where we start, but that's well, some people might start there. I know certainly it's true for me that that's not where I'm starting, but I have some faith. I have faith enough to want to associate with all of you and to do sadhana bhakti. And then once we reach that ecstatic love, then is it Bhava Bhakti? So it's Bhava Bhakti, Prema Bhakti, where then it's like that's the ecstatic stage, the perfection of all human life is to reach that that amazing state. So I got really curious about faith. Okay, so like really what's faith, and like how does it come about, or like, okay, if it starts with faith, how do I start with faith? And so I did some research on faith. And so let's go back to the scriptures, because that's really all that I know to answer even my own questions, or at least to look for answers in. So in Bhagavad Gita 17, chapter 17, text 3, according to one's existence under the various modes of nature, one evolves a particular kind of faith. The living being is said to be of a particular faith according to the modes he has acquired. So depending on what habits, whether it's habits in thinking, in eating, eating, sleeping, mating, defending, whatever it is, whatever activities we're engaged in, depending the quality of these activities, internally, externally. This will ultimately impact the quality of our faith. So the sum aggregate, the sum collective of whatever modes or mode we're predominantly under, this will ultimately impact our faith. Prabhupada writes that the quality of our faith eventually influences the quality of our heart, or whatever faith, whatever the mode of our faith influences the mode of our heart, and vice versa. The mode of our heart will influence the mode of our faith. And in this purport, Prabhupada uses the word sattva, and he equals that with faith. He says the word sattva or faith is very significant in this verse. Sattva or faith always comes out of the works of goodness. So before I keep going, I found that really interesting, and the conclusion that I came to as I continued reading is that that's really the best platform by which we can cultivate genuine faith for Krishna, cultivate genuine faith for God. Because, okay, so Prabhupada continues, as long as one's faith is not completely in purified goodness, so again, not just goodness, but purified goodness, the faith is subject to contamination by any of the modes of material nature. The contaminated modes of material nature expand to the heart. Therefore, according to the position of the heart in contact with a particular mode of material nature, one's faith is established. It should be understood that if one's heart is in the mode of goodness, his faith is also in the mode of goodness. And if his heart is in the mode of passion, his faith is also in the mode of passion. And if his heart is in the mode of darkness, illusion, his faith is also thus contaminated. So here again, we can see the importance of cultivating sattva, the importance of cultivating a sattvic lifestyle to support us to have sattvic faith. Because, okay, in a moment we'll talk about, so what does it mean to have these different kinds of faith? What's the point of having faith in the mode of sattva? How does that help me to do anything? What does it really mean to have faith in the mode of ignorance, or in the mode of passion, or in the mode of sattva? I don't know, I had some vague idea, but I know a little bit more now than I did before. And so, yeah, why is that important? And well, Krishna is so wonderful. He lets us know immediately in the next verse why that's important. So men in the mode of goodness worship demigods, those in the mode of passion worship demons, and those in the mode of ignorance worship ghosts and spirits. So here I kind of had like a wait. I thought it was like, let me cultivate goodness, and then that helps my faith. But men in the mode of goodness worship the demigods. So like, what gives? Like, how does that make sense, right? Because in the purport, Prabhupada specifically writes, these different kinds of worship are not actually God worship. God worship is for persons who are transcendentally situated, in pure goodness. So I was like, what gives, right? Like, cultivate goodness, and then that means faith. Goodness, sattva means faith. But Prabhupada makes a distinction between pure goodness and good old regular goodness. So good old regular goodness is not good enough, even though the name is misleading because it's called goodness. It's not good enough. We actually have to go beyond goodness into pure goodness, into transcending goodness, into like Shuddha Sattva, into pure goodness, which Prabhupada describes. Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudev Shabditam. He calls this the Vasudev stage. When a man is situated in pure goodness, he worships Vasudev. The purport is that those who are completely purified of the material modes of nature and who are transcendentally situated can worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So I wrote this question for myself. The mode of goodness is not enough. Like, what gives? What is that about? I so much hear about cultivating sattva and how that's so helpful. And then I remembered, okay, I oftentimes hear David talk about the mode of goodness is the best platform by which we can transcend the modes. So then it kind of slowly started connecting. But still, I wasn't satisfied with, okay, that's not like all complete. So then we go back to this, back to the Bhagavad Gita. We go to chapter 14:10. Rajas tamas chabibuya sattvam bhavati bharata rajas sattvam tamas chaiva tamas sattvam rajas tata. Sometimes the mode of passion becomes prominent, defeating the mode of goodness, O son of Bharata. And sometimes the mode of goodness defeats passion, and at other times the mode of ignorance defeats goodness and passion. In this way, there is always competition for supremacy. So like this one beats that one, and sometimes this one beats the other two, and sometimes the third one wins. It's just like an all-out fest, which is for me, exhausting, challenging to make sure that this one wins when there's two others that are fighting it, like to cultivate goodness, but then there's passion and ignorance that they team up and they tear down my sattva. So therefore, one who is actually intent on advancing in Krishna consciousness has to transcend these three modes. So that's the trick that we were talking about, the secret of pure goodness, not just good old regular goodness. That one's still within the fight. We need to transcend the fight. So then we're not like the victim of the three modes of material nature fighting over us, fighting over who gets to keep us or who gets to make us their host, like the virus that's going around, right? There's 3 different viruses going around, and well, some are less intense than others, but they're all still viruses in a way, seeking to infect us and make us their host. So the idea is transcending all of that, and it's like the secret 4th stage. It's not one of the 3. The pure goodness, the Vasudeva state, as Prabhupada calls it. So, because Prabhupada writes, if one wants, he can develop goodness. If one wants, he can develop passion. If one wants, he can develop tamas, and he can strengthen any one of those to beat the others. And still, in cultivating any of them, there's still the risk, if one doesn't keep maintaining it, that the others will win. And also it's skewed towards passion and ignorance. So it's not like, if I just do nothing and don't pay attention, maybe accidentally goodness will win. I mean, it's possible, but it's less likely than ignorance or passion, unfortunately. So we have to actually cultivate goodness, and then eventually we really cultivate goodness to transcend the goodness itself. So it's all fairly challenging for my mind that wants concrete and finite things to understand and define. But yes, the goal is to transcend the very thing that I'm aspiring for. Just for me personally, a challenge to commit to a goal that I know I'm going to let go of. But that's what I'm getting from Prabhupada. That's the solution. If one is determined, he can be blessed by the mode of goodness. So there's goodness in that. And then by transcending the mode of goodness, that's when we reach the Vasudeva state, where then we can worship God in all of our activities. Our faith then becomes untainted, without a tinge of any of the material modes. So that's the secret. But don't worry, there's hope. We don't have to be perfect, at least not right away. And so much is called the perfectional stage, but we don't have to be there right now to be on the way. Because, so I was recently reading in my actual personal reading, not in all of the research that I do, in chapter 9, an excerpt from text 15, Prabhupada is describing, Krishna and Prabhupada are describing Mahatma or great souls, those who are constantly engaged in Krishna. And he describes others, right? Like I gave a class on the four other kind of people that approach Krishna: the distressed, the financially troubled, the curious or the inquisitive, and those who are cultivating knowledge. So those are some. And then Prabhupada writes, there are still 3 lower forms of worshiping, of approaching Krishna. So that's he who worships himself as the Supreme Lord, he who concocts some form of the Supreme Lord and worships that, and he who accepts the universal form, the Visva Rupa of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and worships that. With all of those, the first, the one that worships himself as God being the lowest. Okay, so there's still these other kinds of faith that, like, okay, they're actually faith for God. In Prabhupada writes, those still they're much lower than pure, unalloyed, perfect faith. Okay, so many distinctions. It's like mode of goodness is for demigods, passion is for demons, mode of ignorance is for spirits or ghosts. But then there's also a way to worship Krishna that's still not perfect, which at first I was like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. It's like, okay, you worship Krishna, but you do it in kind of this kind of way, and like it's not quite right, but it's kind of good. And then instead it gave me hope. It's like, okay, good. There's not just like one, well, I mean, there is one perfect solution, but at least there's like some tolerance there. Like I can start with some imperfect form of worshiping Krishna, which meets me where I'm at, because I don't have by any means transcendental, unalloyed, eka, nishta, any of that stuff. So I actually, okay, I appreciate, because, okay, I've certainly done all of those at some point in my life. I've worshipped myself as one with the Supreme Lord, like the oneness. I've concocted many kinds of what God means, and I'm not like done puja or anything, but in my mind, yeah, that's like, oh yeah, this is God. And then, okay, maybe where I'm at now, or at least where I've been most recently, is accepting the universal form. It's okay. I actually appreciate seeing that these are bringing me closer to the perfection, to the ekanishta. I mean, by no means am I close to the ekanishta, but it gives me hope that there are ways to worship where we can meet ourselves where we're at and continue to be purified, or continue with our sadhana bhakti, continue to that perfectional stage. But how do we overcome the modes? How do we overcome our desires, our anarthas? Back to the scriptures, I say, and the answer is probably Krishna, because at any time there's a question, okay, I don't know, okay, one way or another, it's like Krishna. That's like the answer. Worship Krishna, think of Krishna, give it to Krishna, surrender to Krishna. It's like some variation of that. So that's just like my hint. That's probably what the answer is going to be. And I found a verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam that I found it really interesting. I found it really comforting, give me lots of hope, because when I think about, I have all these desires and I become overwhelmed, because I hear there's like the path of indulgence, which is strongly disrecommended for our day and age, because it's very risky to actually then transcending our desires to just become more deeply immersed in them. So I think of like, sometimes I think, I want to have that path, like just fulfill my desires, and then they go away, but then there's like so many warnings. Don't do that. You'll fall deeper into your desires. So then I get really bewildered, because then I go to suppression, and then like, okay, I also gave a class on don't do that either, because that doesn't work. So I just wonder, I don't know what to do. Like, don't follow desires and don't suppress them. And so I don't know. And the answer is Krishna. But what does that mean that the answer is Krishna? I actually found the verse that tells me what does that mean. So this is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 29, verse 69. And part of the purport, it's a very long purport, and part of it, okay, Prabhupada gets him. He says, a living entity has immense and unlimited desires for material enjoyment, and he has to transmigrate from one gross body to another until these desires are exhausted. Okay, yeah, that's the way it is. And so no living entity is free from the cycle of birth and death unless he takes to Krishna consciousness. Therefore, in this verse, it is clearly stated, Sadvaika Nishte, so like another form of this Ekanishta, when one is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, in one stroke, he is freed of past and future mental desires. Okay, so that's like when we reach that pure stage, that to me is kind of like mythical. But again, so when we reach that stage, we become instantly purified. Then by the grace of the Supreme Lord, everything becomes simultaneously manifest within the mind. So I thought, okay, that actually sounds counterproductive. Why do I want everything in my mind to be manifested all at once? That sounds like overwhelming, but it's actually the opposite. So in this regard, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur cites the example of Mother Yashoda, who saw the entire cosmic manifestation within the mouth of Lord Krishna. By the grace of Lord Krishna, Mother Yashoda saw all the universes and planets within the mouth of Krishna. And similarly, by his grace, by the grace of Krishna, a Krishna conscious person can see all of his dormant desires at one time and finish all his future transmigrations. So actually, by seeing all of our desires in our mind simultaneously, with the help of Krishna, I don't think that it's just like by thinking of all that. Well, for sure, it's not by thinking of all our desires, but by seeing them all simultaneously by the grace of Krishna. This is a special facility given to the devotee to make his path to return home clear. So it's because a Krishna conscious person doesn't have to accept a future gross body, his recorded desires are fulfilled in a dream. Now, I don't know if there's like different interpretations of what that dream means. I don't know if it means like actually in a dream when you're sleeping, or okay, right now we're all said to be in a dream. I think it's the first, because the idea is that that we don't actually have to experience our desires. We can sort of experience them in our mind simultaneously. They become fulfilled indirectly in a dream, and then we're free from them. So that's what I found about how to transcend the modes, to be at this pure, untainted stage of ekanishta, or like more recently Sadvaika Nishte. Yes. So this was Canto 2, Chapter 6, verse 30. Tatascha manava kale ijire rishayo pare vitaro bibudha daitya manusya kratuvir vibhum. Thereafter the Manus, the fathers of mankind, the great sages, the forefathers, the learned scholars, the Daityas, and mankind performed sacrifices meant to please the Supreme Lord. So the bottom line is, our best chance is to please the Lord. To please the Lord, we need to have faith. And to have faith, we can associate with pure devotees, we can hear, and we can chant. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I welcome comments, expressions, corrections, questions. Malini Devi Dasi.
Very stimulating class. Wonderful. So you said, on one hand, you said there is no impediment to devotional service.
Mm-hmm.
And then also you say, well, we need to go to the mode of goodness, to go to the pure goodness. So it sounds there is a contradiction there.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Is there a question with that, or?
Yeah, that's it. I
Just the
like to
same.
understand. Like, if there is no impediment, then that's mean there is no impediment. I don't need to be in any certain place.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, you say, well, you need to go goodness. And when you're in goodness, it's not where you need to stop. And then you need to transcend goodness.
Yeah.
So there is a contradiction there.
Yeah, I like finite answers. I like definitive, like step-by-step process. My understanding is, yeah, we don't really need to be in the mode of goodness to go to transcendence, to go to pure goodness. And it's more helpful. It's like a smaller jump. But just like in the Sappho courses, you know, there's a place for quantum jumps and there's a place for baby steps. My understanding is going to Sattva helps us that we can get there with baby steps rather than needing to do massive quantum jumps. So that's my understanding.
Thank you.
Is that satisfying enough?
Yeah, it's satisfying.
Okay.
It's satisfying. And you know, also there is the process of devoteeing,
Mm.
Bhakti-bharagya,
Mm.
like where, okay, I have passion, I'm in a mode of passion. That's
Yes,
my
I am.
truth, you know, like mainly passionate, you know, ignorance, I don't know so much passion, goodness, I don't know so much passion, I do know very well. And devoteeing, I mean, I can use that passion in the service of the Lord. You know, if I have a tendency to work hard, then I can work hard for the Lord. If I have any tendency I have, I can devotee them. And in that, then I can reach transcendence by devoteeing wherever I am at. So
Yes. Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that principle. That's something that actually a principle that gives me a lot of comfort. Because okay, when I find, well, I like attention, and I think, oh no, I like attention, I should want attention. Then I think, okay, how can I get attention in a way that's still helpful for Krishna?
Yeah. Get attention from Srila Prabhupada.
Yes. So then, I very much like that principle. I appreciate you connecting that with this lecture. Hare Krishna.
Very stimulating lecture. Thank you.
I see George. You have a raised hand.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Class. I'm very moved and inspired by your spirit of discovery and your searching. My question is, you mentioned that all it takes is to please the Lord. But then when Lord Chaitanya was asking to serve and worship Lord Krishna, and the devotee wanted to worship Lord Rama, it seems like what would be pleasing to Lord Chaitanya, who is Krishna, would be that the devotee would worship Krishna. So in that example, it's if all it takes is to just please the Lord, how are we pleasing the Lord? By not pleasing the Lord, I guess, or by not like...
Yes. You're pointing to a phenomenon that I come to nearly every day, that Krishna consciousness seems to be full of contradictions. And I like to point them out. So I appreciate your comment. Yes. So I the story continues beyond what I said. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was sharing this. I don't know who he was sharing this story with, but he was narrating this process. Yeah, I tried to, get Murari Gupta to change his faith, and then he was glorifying Murari Gupta when he refused to. He said, "Wow, this is so pleasing. Your service, your attachment is so pure that even I couldn't shake him. Even I couldn't shake him away from his attachment for the Lord." And he was glorifying him to other devotees. He said something like, I'm paraphrasing, like, Murari Gupta, he's my life and soul. He's so pure. So actually, Lord Chaitanya, the Lord himself, he was so pleased with Murari Gupta.
So the distinction then, from what I hear from your sharing, is that Lord Krishna and Lord Ramachandra are essentially to be viewed as equally worshipable in a sense of getting this pure goodness state. Goodness.
I don't know myself. I don't have a strong opinion on that. I can see how one could easily draw that conclusion from the text. The way that I interpreted it is that it's not so much more about like is Krishna or Ramachandra like equally valuable in worshiping, but the way that I saw it is that it's the worship itself. It's like the level, the purity, the sincerity of the devotion. Of course, like, yeah, I mean, both Krishna and Ramachandra are Krishna. I don't know, again, if it's like equally to worship one or the other. But what I was taking away from this is that Lord Chaitanya was so pleased with his devotees' devotion.
So it was more about the sincerity and the commitment to devotion is what is really kind of highlighted in that verse.
That's how I interpret it, and both Dira and Malini have comments, so they can elucidate.
Okay.
Yes.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Dira Govinda Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, I'm appreciating the discussion. Yeah, thanks very much for your class, as I'm feeling enthused in devotional service by your presentation, and I appreciate the discussion with George. And my comment is just to confirm how you responded, because I mean the distinction is we need to know where we're at, and so okay, so this here just to please the Lord, and Murari Gupta didn't please the Lord. Okay, so Murari Gupta is in Shuddha Sattva, just like we can say, okay, the idea is to please Krishna, and then Krishna's playing, and Mother Yashoda is calling him in to have lunch, or to take, Mother Yashoda is calling him to take his bath, and he's like, I want to keep playing. So we say, we can say, Mother Yashoda is not pleasing Krishna. She doesn't get the basic thing. But Mother Yashoda saying, no, Krishna, look, no, I'm putting my foot down. I'm taking a stand. You need to come in and take your bath. Stop playing with your friends. Krishna is so pleased with her opposing him. So these are all pastimes amongst personalities who are way beyond the modes. There's no tinge of the modes of nature. And in those rasa pastimes, then there's all sorts of displeasing Krishna. There's all sorts of affectionate exchanges that are sometimes humorous, sometimes heartbreaking, but that's in the Shuddha Sattva, very personal, in the stage of personal affectionate exchange with Krishna on this very exalted platform. And so Murari Gupta is on that platform. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was saying, well, Krishna's higher. You should worship Krishna. And, you know, in one sense of calculation, there's truth to that. Just like in one sense of calculation, in terms of intimacy with Krishna, you could say the gopis' rasa is higher than the cowherd boys, which is higher than the blade of grass. And in another most important sense, it's all equally transcendental. It's all equally transcendental. So ultimately, just as I like how you reflected, George, you reflected as a very cogent response, that ultimately these are pastimes just to deepen the affection between the devotees and the Lord. And so Lord Chaitanya, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Radha Krishna Nahayanya, who's a combined manifestation of Radha and Krishna, and Lord Chaitanya also sometimes did show his Ramachandra form. So his Sadbhuj includes a Ramachandra form. So ultimately, Lord Chaitanya Murari Gupta, they're engaged in pastimes that have no tinge of the material modes of nature to deepen the affection. And Lord Chaitanya is so pleased. He challenged Murari Gupta. There was some teasing there, and there was challenge. And in that challenge, Murari Gupta was moved to pain and tears, and that pain and tears. And he took a stand. Just like Mother Yashoda takes a stand. No, Krishna, you come in now to take your bath. Murari Gupta took a stand. I just can't do it. You might be right, Sri Chaitanya. You might be right, but I just cannot give up Sita Ram, Lakshman, Hanuman. And Lord Chaitanya is so pleased by that. He's so pleased. And so the whole pastime deepens the affection, just like Mother Yashoda's pastime with Krishna deepens the affection. So we don't want to imitate that if we're still influenced by the modes of nature. And influenced by the modes of nature, then just like I really appreciate the research into Prabhupada that you do for your classes, and so you landed upon this Adal Shraddha Tata Suru Sangata Bhajana Kriya, this 9-step process. And in the early stages, starting with some trust in the process. And one thing about faith, yeah, the foundation is faith, and everyone has faith in something. And our choice is where to place our faith, and our assertion is the most reasonable place, the most rational place to place our faith is in this process of bhakti. And so we're in the modes of nature, and we're endeavoring to progress. And so we follow that 9-step process, following Srila Prabhupada. And just as you said, yeah, we cultivate the mode of goodness through practicing sadhana bhakti, and part of sadhana bhakti is deliberately endeavoring to cultivate tolerance and patience and cleanliness. We cultivate goodness without making goodness the ultimate goal. And one thing I'll say is that, yes, because the ultimate goal is transcendental, pure, loving, devotional service to Krishna. And so we can say we let go of goodness, but not really, because the Shuddha Sattva, it's transcendental to Sattva, but it includes it. So this Bhakti Yoga process, it's all about transcend and include, because like it transcends dry cognitive study. At the same time, it includes all the benefits of jnana. It includes all the benefits of karma yoga. It includes all the benefits of sattva. So it's transcend, but now, I need to let go of that. It's transcend and include. Just like in the typical Varna system, one comes up to the stage of a Brahmin. A Brahmin, they're the human beings who are predominantly in goodness. Maybe not pure goodness, but predominantly in goodness compared to the other Varnas. Brahmin means one who knows Brahman. They're in goodness. And then it's a key principle, this term a Vaishnav Brahmin. A Vaishnav is automatically a Brahmin. A Vaishnav, someone who's actually serving Vishnu, Ramachandra, Krishna. A Vaishnav is above in the sense of the consciousness is at a cleaner level of purity. So a Vaishnav, whether a Vaishnav might apparently be doing work that we would call Sudra or a Vaishya or whatever, a Vaishya is automatic to be a Vaishnav. To be a Vaishnav automatically includes being a Brahmin in goodness. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Malini, you wanted to comment on this also?
Well, no, I could, but I don't think it's necessary anymore.
Okay. Hare Krishna, thank you for sharing, dear Govinda. Switch back to gallery. Any Dominique?
Thank you for your class. Very enlivening. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I heard you say something that stuck out to me just now, that you experience Krishna consciousness as being full of contradictions.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering, is it really full of contradictions, or is it that you can't put it in a box? Because if it was limited to like one definition or one, it would be, I don't know. It just, spiritual life would be mechanical if it was something you could just label and, figure out and control, just like you have it all figured out type of thing. So it just seems impossible for spiritual life or like for God to be limited and to put him in a box because I feel like just in personal experience that there's like ever expanding realizations. Like sometimes I feel like I finally had a huge breakthrough, it's hard to even imagine after that breakthrough that there's actually something way more of a breakthrough coming like a year from now or 6 months from now, but it does. There's always something that I hadn't realized yet. And it's so thrilling to live with that in that paradigm of ever expanding realization and joy. I just, I don't know. So I'm challenging you. Is it really full of contradictions?
I appreciate your challenge. Yeah, I'm not saying Krishna consciousness is full of contradictions. I'm saying that's how I experience it. And apparent contradictions, seeming contradictions. And yeah, it's because of exactly what you said. I like to have things in boxes and understand them. And I can't do that no matter how much I try with any segment, any little portion. Okay, food. Okay, so it's like this. Okay, but then whatever, fermented food. Okay, that's like tamasic. Oh, but except actually if it's this kind of fermented food, that's sattvic. Or be really gentle with your food. But then, Krishna has food fights with his different personalities. So yes, so I like to have definitive answers, and I don't get them. So yeah, I experience it as contradictory. It's not, I get, because I just don't understand anything, but that's how I experience it. Yes, I appreciate your challenge.
I can relate. I just, at the same time, I find it thrilling. Like, I love it when Prabhupada turns everything upside down and says something really bold and controversial. And I just have that feeling of like, it's thrilling. It's rebelling against dry, stagnant religion. So I have this like thrill about the dynamism. I don't know how to say it.
Yes. Yes, you experience it as enlivening, that there's not like cut and dry boxes.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Any other questions, comments?
I'll just say, I heard Malani whisper in the background, apparent contradictions or seeming contradiction. And that Prabhupada uses that term, apparent contradiction.
Yes.
Those apparent contradictions, for me, they've been the source of profoundly deepening faith, if I look back over the past 37 years, because I have so many experiences that as I make some micrometers of progress, then what was a painful contradiction that tormented my mind gets resolved at a higher level of consciousness. Albert Einstein's often quoted that we cannot solve a problem with the same consciousness that created it. And so I've had, I will say, thousands of experiences now where, yeah, something that was apparently contradictory, and then I make some micrometer progress in my own humility, my own surrender, my own taking shelter in Srila Prabhupada, and then the dots connect in ways that become so clear at the same time from where I was at, the month before, it was just this tormenting contradiction. And now I encounter them, such questions regularly, but they're no longer tormenting because I have trust in this roadmap, because I have thousands of landmarks that are just where the map says they ought to be. And just like in this discussion, okay, yeah, we should just please the Lord. And then you cite Murari Gupta, who's defying the Lord, and then he's a great devotee. Oh, that's a contradiction. It would seem to be like a contradiction. And once we get that, yeah, well, there's some nuance, there's some complexity here. This is not for simpletons. There's some nuance here. And so, yeah, so there's one set of principles for those, immersed in Rajas and Tamas, like myself. And there's another set of principles that are for those who are truly in Shuddha Sattva, in affectionate rasa with Krishna in one of his forms. And the set of principles are not contradictory because it's all in the context of moving towards self-realization, towards love of Krishna. And depending on where we're at, there might be a different set of principles. And so for me, that completely makes sense. At the same time, 35 years ago, if I read those different things, I might say, oh, this is a contradiction. This doesn't make any sense. There's a problem here. And just that one distinction that we're making. And I really like, Dominique, how you phrase the distinction. Are there contradictions, or is it just that Krishna consciousness and Krishna and the pure devotee of Krishna can't be put in a box? I think that's a great distinction to meditate on. And just like in learning anything, whether we're learning a sport or an art or mathematics, at first we naturally learn the rules and regulations of how to put my wrist to swing the racket, how to solve these problems. Then when one is at a level of mastery, they've truly transcended following all the rules and regulations. Now it's not like they've given up the rules and regulations, but their transcendence includes it. So like a brilliant mathematician won't need to go through the 14 steps to solve something. He'll have some intuition. Same with a master piano player or guitar player. It might seem like, they're violating the basic fundamentals, but they've so incorporated the fundamentals that in their spontaneous affection and mastery, their expression is no longer bound by the fundamentals. And for someone who's just practicing, just learning, they don't want to imitate the masters, but they do want to follow the example. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that same example that you did in class. I think it was yesterday when you were talking about some tennis player and, oh, he has too much topspin or whatever. I don't know the terms. And oh, he clearly doesn't get it, but like he was, I don't know, like the #1 player in the world or something like this. Yeah, and I appreciate you like bringing to mind like consciously stepping out of the bounds rather than not knowing what the bounds are and doing it accidentally. It's like I can think of it as like the difference between starving and fasting. It's like, well, externally it's the same thing, but one is like intentionally and the other one is it just happened because I don't have food or something. Yeah, so I appreciate that connection, and yeah, I like the phenomenon that you described of how come we might see seeming contradictions, because whatever level of consciousness we're at, we don't have the depth perception, the extra dimension. It's like we're flatlanders trying to understand the 3-dimensional world, and like it just all looks like a line or whatever. And so I really appreciate you mentioning that as we progress, as our understanding, as our devotion, as our faith progresses, some of these seeming contradictions might not seem like contradictions anymore. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you.
Bharat.
I appreciate your live presentation, and I feel very entertained, and I feel some gratitude and respect for my children when you're sharing about the different seemingly contradictions. Children, they don't have that. I didn't observe that for them. They just think of Krishna like a superhero. Like I was growing up with these Marvel heroes, and okay, Superman, he can, of course, he can just change clothes and then he flies. But then Kryptonite, it's over. And there are so many different rules that we cannot perceive for these superheroes. And for Gopal and Damodar, they have the face, and when they were like 5 or so, and then a little Krishna doll is falling, they start to cry. And of course, it's not like they fully realized that, but I keep on forgetting that they are special souls. And when I was 5, I had no clue of who is Krishna. So that gives me a feeling of respect, and I want to keep that in mind when I'm dealing with them, because for me they seem like little kids, but they must have done something auspicious and some kind of service in their last life. And it's moving me.
Yeah, I hear that. You're moved. You're touched. I'm touched hearing you're sharing this lecture is moving you to special appreciation for your children and for their sincerity, for you noticing in them that they don't have these seeming struggles of contradictions. They seem accepting. They don't question or resist. You experience them as accepting Krishna and in his different nuances, and that's really inspiring for you.
It's more like me thinking, Raja and Tama are going to tear down a good old sattva. Then I'm judging them like that. Or in kirtan they are making noise. But for children, that's if they just make, for them it's maybe sometimes like singing, and they are listening, and it helps me to think of not to judge materially about my children, which are actually not my children, and which are just little Vaishnavas. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I like how you put that. It helps you to not judge your children materially who are not material. They are transcendental to matter. So judging them materially, yeah, you might come with some seeming contradictions. Like, okay, well, they're just kind of making sound during kirtan. They're not enunciating each word, so they're not doing it right. And then you're considering, wow, like maybe their consciousness is like millions of times more advanced than mine. What do I know?
Yeah, and they know all the characters from the Mahabharata, and they love the Srimad Bhagavatam. So yeah, that gives me really faith in Srila Prabhupada's books, because they are so much more interesting than like a series of Superman or so. It's like so much bigger and broader and deeper, and it's working if children just get that when they are young.
Yeah, I'm really hearing how your children, experiencing your children really helps to increase your own faith.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Eze.
Ramachandra?
Thank you, Keith. Yeah, what I get from the lecture, that although you're not like in the Shuddha Sattva, you are attracted to Shuddha Sattva. It's something that is attracting you. Am I correct in that statement?
I'm not sure. I don't understand it. So I mean, I would say it sounds interesting. I don't know if I'm like attracted as like I'm going towards there because I don't know really what it means. I don't really know what it is, but I like the idea of suffering less. That's nice. And I like the idea of transcending the boundaries or like the boxes.
Yeah, so yeah, it sounds like it attracts you to, like attracts, or like it's curious. You're curious about tasting it. I guess that's kind of what I felt. And yeah, I thought to ask sort of and invite maybe others to, if they would like to share, maybe in the form of apparel, what attracts, if it attracts them, like or which mode attracts them, or what attracts them about getting to Shuddha Sattva. And for me personally, I find a state of like no contradictions, because like contradictions, like it's something that my mind is always taxing how to fix all the time, contradictions. And Shuddha Sattva, it's like in the ideal, like the contradictions are not contradictions anymore, and you can just experience Krishna consciousness finally.
Yeah, that sounds very attractive. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Ramachandra.
Krishna.
Rukmini.
Yeah, in Chaitanya Charitamrita there is a verse, maybe dear Govinda can refer it. It's talking about controversies, and controversies is almost like contradictions in a sense. And in that verse it explains that all these controversies are meant, they are there in the scriptures in order to sharpen our intelligence, and also and all these contradictions are resolved in the Supreme. So I just wanted to put that in. And again, if dear Govinda has the more specific, because I was trying to find that verse, I just couldn't, I wouldn't know where to find it. But if any of, the more scholarly people here can spice that.
Yeah, I don't know the Bengali or Sanskrit. I'm pretty sure I know which verse you're referring to, and the way you paraphrased it sounds right on to me.
Thank you.
Malini would like to say more about that.
Well, I want to say more because Srila Prabhupada speaks about it a lot. He says that the Vedas are the mother And often he speak about those contradictions to show that like part of spiritual life is that faith, to really have faith in the Veda. And he said in the Vedas there is many contradictions, and the contradiction that he point out, often he point two of them. Is, for example, in the Veda he says stool of an animal is untouchable. It's untouchable, it's like muchi, it's something impure. And then in the Veda it says the stool of the cow is pure and purifying. And so Prabhupada often gives that example of contradiction in the Veda. It's also in the conch shell. You know, like a shell is something that's impure, but then it's used in worship. So, and often Prabhupada, practically so many classes, he gives those examples to really like hammer home that sense of like faith in the Veda, faith in the mother. When the mother speak and say, I know with your father, then we believe that because she's the one who knows and nobody else knows. So that's how Prabhupada bring up those contradictions. He speak about them quite a lot. And as a platform for trusting the Veda, trusting the scripture, like you do, like you said, like when I don't know, I go to the scriptures. And that's exactly what Srila Prabhupada is speaking about.
Yeah, I like both of those principles, that the contradictions are there to sharpen our intelligence and increase our faith. Thanks for sharing that, Rukmini. Any other comments or questions?
I just have a fun little story to share. So my son, Lieto, or Lakshman actually is his spiritual name. He is like really naturally, he's naturally like serving and doing chores and just on his feet helping, which is really nice. It's just his nature. Actually, we even had like an astrology reading, and that like he'll be happy when he's serving, and he's a natural servant, and I experience him that way. But then every like 6 months or so, he gets struck with this intense like desire for something, like a thing to entertain him, or like a toy or whatever. And it strikes him like twice a year, 3 times a year, and it takes over him like a cloud, like a storm cloud, and there's no shaking him from it. He's not going to get over it, and he takes like 24 hours to 48 hours stuck on that desire, and like it's just ruminating. And we can't change his mind or use logic or anything. He's just stuck there. And I hope I'm not revealing too much. I'm not trying to reveal too much about him, but sometimes Gaetano and I are really not into consumerism. I don't get things for my children because they whine for it. It's like the last thing I'm going to do is set up a dynamic where they whine and they get things. And I'm not into buying stuff really, but you know, the thing is, he has in reality, I think sometimes he can feel too restricted. So recently, the story's almost over. So recently a desire came over him. He used his money, and we approved that he purchased this thing. As soon as we purchased it, the next day he took the flower bowl out of Gaetano's hand during Guru Puja and decorated the altar. He's not interested in decorating the altar when we offer flowers in the morning, but he was like, no, it was just inspiration to do devotional service. He's really usually shy about it. He's not resistant, he's not like, he seems to accept Krishna consciousness, but he's just quiet and not really visible with his like faith. But I was thinking, well, I was trying to be open-minded. Like, I guess he needs to feel satisfied materially a little bit, and then he can like turn to Krishna more. I don't know, interesting experience. I mean, and I feel like I did the right thing to support this desire and, help him get it. Anyway.
Yeah, you're satisfied with the decision that you made, and like, okay, yeah, to me it makes sense. To several classes ago, Dear Govinda was sharing it's our responsibility to be happy in Krishna consciousness. And then maybe in connection with that, or maybe different, he shares the analogy of the horses and how if we either let them go too loose or if we pull them too tight, it can slow down our progress. And that's like your comment really makes sense to me within that framework. That you mentioned maybe he feels too restricted, and so then you gave him a little bit of slack. Oh, and then he's again like inspired and enthusiastic to serve. To me, like that's how that makes sense to me.
Yeah, it was really interesting to observe. I don't know. I was just also connecting with Bharat, talking about our children and judging them. That's what came to mind earlier. I have a very judgmental mind. And recently, I was with someone else with a judgmental mind. And we just put it out there, all of our judgment. And it was so fun to just not judge myself for being judgmental, because everyone, it's culturally, being judgmental is considered the opposite of spiritual. And it's like just wrong. And I judge it harshly. If I'm like, oh, I was judging, that's terrible, I'm a worse friend. Yeah. But anyway, but I just gave it all a voice, that judgmental voice. And it was so freeing, and we just laughed really hard about all of our judgments of other people in our life. We just laid it out, all of our judgment. It was really like so healing, actually, to just give it a voice a little bit. Anyway.
Yeah.
I was thinking of sharing
that sounds very liberating.
How fun it is to just say it and let it go. But then by the end of the conversation, I'm taking responsibility. Like, how come I have that consciousness? And I felt more free to do self-reflection, instead of just like, oh, I'm judgmental, I judge myself, I shouldn't act like that, and then control myself. And it's just not very much space. Anyway,
yeah, I hear like a parallel of what you shared in your story with your son. Like, okay, you have this idea you shouldn't have judgments, so then like you really like try to reel them in, like, no, I don't have judgments, and then you gave yourself some space to have judgments, and then your natural inspiration is to use that for self-realization. Thanks for sharing, Dominique.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Rukmini.
Dominique's story reminded me of the pastime of Srila Prabhupada as a child with his father. When his father bought him one, I don't know if it was a pistol or a gun, and Prabhupada was persistent and insisted that he wanted the second one as well for each hand. And he was like throwing a tantrum that his father had no choice, and he bought the second one as well. So this can soothe all the parents. So, great souls can behave like that also in childhood.
Thanks for sharing, Rukmini. Some relief for Vaishnav parents. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Namaste Sarvati Devi Gauravan.
Thank you all for coming to class. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.